On a barren, windswept plateau, a circle of giant, crystalline towers hums with a faint, sad light. In the middle of it all, a towering alien in ornate armor glares down at a small, frail-looking child. But standing between them is a man in a simple, dark gray military uniform. His posture is relaxed, but his eyes are sharp. The girl, whose skin is a pale lavender, takes a defiant step, putting herself in front of the human to shield him. A shimmering silver aura starts radiating from her, not with malice, but with a protective power so immense it makes the very air vibrate. The armored alien actually takes a step back, a look of pure shock and fear on his face. On a world where a child's touch is a death sentence for her guardians, she's cast out and labeled a curse. But when a lone human soldier shows up, the girl makes a choice that will shock her entire species, picking the one being in the universe resilient enough to actually survive her. Welcome to Sci-Fi Adventures. Today, we're jumping into a story about a cursed child, a tough-as-nails soldier, and a bond that would redefine an entire civilization. Our story starts on Kaia, a planet orbiting two suns, which means the landscape is bathed in a permanent twilight of purple and gold. The people here are the Kaian, an ancient and powerful species with a society built on tradition, honor, and a deep spiritual connection to their world. Their cities are incredible, made of bioluminescent crystal and living wood that's been grown and shaped for thousands of years. But for all their wisdom, the Kaian are a people completely ruled by superstition, their lives dictated by cryptic prophecies and the rigid rules of their elders. At the very center of their culture is the idea of guardianship. This is more than just being a bodyguard. It's a sacred bond that links a seasoned mentor to a promising kid, making sure wisdom and honor are passed down. For a Kaian, being chosen as a guardian is the highest honor you can get. And for a kid, having a guardian is a basic right. A right for every child, except one. Her name is Elara. Her birth wasn't exactly a happy event. It happened during a rare eclipse, which their seers had long ago predicted was an omen of sorrow and decay. They called her anathema, basically the unchild, a walking blight on everything they held sacred. Because Elara was born with a curse, a horrifying condition they called the withering. How the curse worked was as mysterious as it was destructive. Whenever a Kaian took the oath of guardianship for Elara, the traditional bond would form. But this bond was a poisoned chalice. Within weeks, the new guardian would start to change. They'd become distant and paranoid, their eyes holding a new, terrifying fear. Sleep brought them no rest, only nightmares. They talked about hearing whispers in the silence and feeling a crushing weight on their very soul. And that was just stage 1. Stage 2 was madness. The paranoia would spiral out of control, turning friends into enemies. The strongest warriors would tremble at shadows, and the wisest scholars would start scrawling nonsense on ancient texts, trying to figure out why their own minds were breaking. The final stage was the withering itself. The guardian's body would just decay, their strong forms wasting away as if they were being eaten from the inside out. It was a slow, agonizing end of mind, body, and spirit. The Kaian believed the trigger, the thing that sped it all up, was Elara's touch. A single touch, they thought, would seal a guardian's horrific fate. The first guardian to fall was Vorin, a name spoken with total reverence on Kaia. He was captain of the Elder Guard, a warrior who had seen victory for over 200 years. When no one else would step up for Elara, Vorin did, believing his sense of duty and his incredible willpower was stronger than any bad omen. He just saw a scared kid, not a monster. For a little while, it seemed like he was right. He trained Elara from a stern, respectful distance. But then the bond took hold. Vorin started hearing the whispers. At first, he dismissed it as just being tired. Then the nightmares began. He started seeing threats in every shadow, his hand never leaving his weapon. He grew thin, his features sinking into a mask of pure anxiety. Then one day, during a simple training drill, Elara stumbled. On pure instinct, Vorin reached out and grabbed her arm to steady her. It was for less than a second. Witnesses said a shudder went through the great warrior. He snatched his hand back like he'd been burned. After that, his decline was terrifyingly fast. He accused the elders of plotting against him. He locked himself in his quarters, ranting about a voice in his head that wasn't his. Within a month of that single touch, the mighty Vorin was gone, a withered husk of the hero he once was. His death cemented the terror surrounding the child. You'd think that would be the end of it, but one more Kaelin was willing to try. Her name was Lyra, a brilliant scholar who didn't believe in curses. She believed in things that just weren't understood yet. She argued that fear and superstition had killed Vorin, not the child. She thought the withering was some kind of biological agent or psychic weirdness that could be studied and neutralized. So, with the Council's reluctant blessing, she became Elara's second guardian. Her approach was totally clinical. She kept her distance, talking to Elara through screens and drones, and documenting every tiny change in the girl's biology. And she was actually making progress, detecting faint psionic readings coming from Elara that spiked during moments of stress. Wanting to learn more, she decided to run a controlled experiment. She put on a containment suit and went into Elara's room to get a direct reading during a moment of emotional distress. She started questioning Elara about Morin, about her loneliness, intentionally trying to make her upset. Elara, just a little kid, started to cry. As her sadness grew, Lyra's instruments went crazy. The psionic energy spiked to a level she never could have predicted, and then it latched onto her. Through the thick glass of her helmet, Lyra's eyes went wide with horror. Her disciplined academic mind was suddenly flooded with the raw, unfiltered agony of a terrified, lonely child. It was a tidal wave of pure emotion her brain couldn't handle. She stumbled back, clawing at her helmet and screaming about the noise. Lyra's mind, once a library of reason, was torn apart in hours. She fell into a catatonic state, and her body withered away in 2 weeks. After Lyra, there were no more volunteers. The elders declared Elara a lost cause, a weapon that couldn't be controlled. They moved her to a desolate ruin on the edge of the Whispering Canyons, a place known for bad spirits. Food was left for her from a distance. She was completely, utterly alone. Years passed. Elara grew into a young woman, watchful and lean. She was a ghost story used to scare Kaelin children. Meanwhile, Kaia started to suffer. A strange blight began to creep across their farmlands, turning vibrant plants to gray dust and threatening famine. Desperate, the elders sent out a distress signal. The response came from a very unexpected source: humanity. The United Nations starship Stardust, a humanitarian vessel, answered the call. Humans were pretty new on the galactic scene, known for being a bizarre mix of chaotic, optimistic, and having an almost pathological need to help. The Kaelin were suspicious, but beggars can't be choosers. Among the Stardust's crew was Sergeant Jackson Jax Porter. Jax wasn't a scientist or a diplomat. He was a soldier. He was pragmatic, weary, and had seen enough weirdness in the universe to not be surprised by much. He didn't believe in grand prophecies or ancient legacies. His philosophy was simple: deal with the problem in front of you. As he once told a rookie, "Curses? Kid, I've faced worse Mondays." The humans set up a base camp, and Jax's team was put on security patrol. It was on one of these patrols, near the edge of the forbidden Whispering Canyons, that he saw her. His mission briefing said the area was off-limits, spiritually hazardous, but Jax saw what the Kaelin guides refused to: not a ghost, but a lonely-looking young woman watching the twin suns set. His orders were to avoid the area. His instincts told him something was wrong. The image of the solitary girl stayed with him. The next day, he found an excuse to patrol the same route. This time, he brought an extra nutrient bar. Jax approached the ruins cautiously, and Elara immediately scrambled back, her eyes wide with a fear that had been conditioned into her for years. Jax held up his hands peacefully, placed the sealed nutrient bar on a flat rock, and backed away without a word. When he passed by an hour later, the bar was gone. He did this for 3 days, never speaking, never getting too close. On the 4th day, she peeked out from behind a crumbling wall. For the first time, he saw curiosity in her eyes, not just fear. Of course, this silent kindness didn't go unnoticed. A Kaelan patrol saw it and reported it to the elders, who were furious. This clumsy, ignorant ape species had broken their most sacred taboo. They sent guards to punish Elara and reinforce the brutal lesson of her isolation. But as the guards advanced on Elara, a human voice cut through the air. "That's far enough." Jax and his fire team had followed them. The lead Kaelan guard sneered, "This does not concern you, human." Jax's CEO, Commander Eva Rostova, arrived on the scene. "My sergeant was providing aid to someone who is clearly malnourished and neglected," she said coldly. "If you have a problem with that, you can file a complaint with the Interstellar Federation. Until then, you will back off." The Kaelan withdrew, but now the issue was out in the open. The elders convened a council and demanded the humans stop all contact. To show how serious this was, they brought out a new volunteer to be Elara's guardian, a young Kaelan named Rylan, who was pale with terror. He'd been chosen by lottery, and the job was basically a public execution. The head elder motioned for the ceremony to begin. "Step forward, Rylan. Take the oath." Rylan shuffled forward, trembling. But then something inside Elara broke. She looked at the terrified boy being sent to die for her. She looked at the cold, unfeeling elders. And then she looked at Jax, whose face showed not fear or disgust, but simple, quiet concern. In a move that sent a shockwave of gasps through the chamber, Elara strode forward. She walked right past Rylan, ignoring the elders' commands. She walked directly up to Jax. She looked up at him, her large, dark eyes locking with his. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand and placed it flat against his forearm. The moment she touched him, something hit Jax like a freight train. It wasn't electricity, it was information. A chaotic, overwhelming flood of pure sensation. A decade of crushing loneliness, sharp fear, dull sorrow, and the faint glimmer of a child's hope. He grunted, his knees buckling under the sheer psychic weight of it all. The Kaelan elders stared in horror, sure they were about to watch this foolish human scream and go mad. But Jax didn't scream. He gritted his teeth. His mind, a fortress built on the bedrock of human chaos, of loud music, crowded cities, conflicting emotions, and the sheer stubborn refusal to lie down and die, bent, but it did not break. He weathered the storm, and as the psychic flood began to calm, he heard a single clear thought, spoken not in words, but in pure feeling, directly in his mind. It was Elara's voice, fragile but resolute. "You won't break." Jax looked down at the small lavender hand on his arm, then back into her eyes. He saw the question there, the desperate plea. He gave a slow, deliberate nod. He accepted. The cursed girl of Kaia had just chosen a human as her guardian, and the Kaelan could only watch in complete and utter shock. The days that followed were tense. The Kaelan Council let the guardianship continue, basically treating it as a morbid experiment. The seers predicted Jax would be dead within a month. They watched him, waiting for the paranoia, the madness, the decay. But they were about to be very disappointed. Jax did experience the curse, just not like any Kaelan ever had. For him, it wasn't whispers of madness, it was more like a conversation. That empathic link was a fire hose of raw emotion. The first night, his dreams were filled with echoes of her lonely life, the biting wind, the taste of stale water, the overwhelming silence. He woke up in cold sweat, the phantom weight of her loneliness feeling like a physical presence in the room. But Jax was a soldier. He was trained for this kind of thing. His mind, unlike the rigidly ordered Kaelan psyche, knew how to compartmentalize. He could take Elara's emotions, acknowledge them, and file them away without letting them take over. He started spending his off-duty hours with her, talking to her, telling her about Earth, about rain and snow and oceans. He treated her like a person, not a curse. And through their bond, he felt her cautious curiosity slowly bloom into trust. He quickly figured out the truth of her curse. It was an incredibly powerful, unfiltered telepathic and empathic ability. She didn't just project her feelings, she acted as a mirror, amplifying the emotions of anyone she bonded with. The Kaelan, a species that prided itself on hiding emotion, had minds that were completely unprepared. Their own buried fears and anxieties were reflected back at them, amplified 1,000 times.
They weren't being driven mad by her, they were being driven mad by themselves. A human mind, however, is a different beast. Humans live in a constant state of emotional chaos. Jax's mind was a messy, resilient mix of hope, cynicism, grief, and humor. When his emotions were reflected back at him, his brain just accepted it as the normal background voice of being alive. Realizing this, he started teaching her control using simple human grounding techniques. Okay, kid, close your eyes, name 5 things you can hear right now. Through their link, he could feel her focus on the wind, a rock lizard, the hum of the ship, her own heart, and his steady breathing. The psychic noise between them started to clear. He taught her how to build walls in her mind. Your mind is your house, he explained. You don't have to let everyone who knocks come inside and track mud on the floor. You can look through the peephole first. He felt her grab onto the idea, the chaotic energy around her becoming more focused. The Kalan watched this with growing disbelief. The human wasn't dying. He wasn't going mad. This was impossible. The head elder authorized a series of tests to figure out what was going on. A random rock slide occurred. Jax tackled Elara out of the way. A venomous predator escaped. Jax stunned it with his sidearm. The final test was more direct. They sent Rylan and 2 other warriors to confront them. The human defiles our sacred ground, Rylan shouted, getting aggressive. Seeing the threat to her guardian, Elara panicked. Her control shattered. A psychic scream of pure primal fear erupted from her, hitting the 3 Kalan like a physical blow. They collapsed, clutching their heads, whimpering on the ground. But Jax knew what it was. Instead of panicking, he knelt and spoke to her calmly. Hey, look at me. It's okay. Breathe with me. He pushed his own calm through their bond, giving her an anchor. The wave of fear stopped. The Kalan warriors staggered to their feet, looking at Elara, then at Jax, with a new, terrified respect. This wasn't just a curse, it was a weapon, and the human, impossibly, was helping her aim it.
While Jax and Elara were forging their bond, the blight on Kaia was getting worse. The human scientists couldn't stop it. Famine was becoming a real threat. The seers seized on the growing panic. They declared that the blight was the world itself rejecting Elara and her unclean bond with the human. The solution? A ritual of purification. Elara had to be sacrificed. The council, drowning in fear and desperation, agreed. Jax was having none of it. The science team was clear. The blight was artificial. It contained bioagents that couldn't have evolved here. This wasn't a curse, it was an attack. The Kaelan wouldn't listen and gave Jax 1 cycle to prepare Elara for the ritual. With the clock ticking, Jax decided to handle it himself. We're going to figure this out, kid, he said. They went into the heart of the blighted lands. As Jax took samples, Elara reached out with her mind, not at a person, but at the land itself. At first, she felt nothing, but as she pushed deeper, guided by Jax's calm, she found it. Underneath all the death was something wrong, a cold, alien, and evil consciousness humming deep underground. It felt hungry. There's something down there, her thought shot to Jax. It's dark, it's hateful, it's what's making the land sick. Jax's sensors confirmed it, picking up weird seismic vibrations in energy pockets. The pieces clicked into place. The blight wasn't just a plague, it was a terraforming process. Rushing back to the stardust, they cross-referenced the energy signature. They got a partial match, a silicon-based subterranean species called the Squirrel. They were parasites that destabilized ecosystems, sowed discord among the natives using psionics, and then emerged to claim the dying world. They had been on Kaia for generations, nurturing the Kaelan's superstitions, turning Elara's gift into a curse to keep everyone distracted while they killed the planet from below. Jax and Elara raced back to the capital, arriving just as the purification ritual was about to begin. Elara was to be thrown into a fissure in the middle of the Grand Plaza. "Stop!" Jax yelled, bursting through the guards. "You're making a terrible mistake. The blight isn't her fault. You're under attack." "The ravings of a madman," the elder spat. "The ritual will proceed."
But just as the guards moved to grab Elara, the ground began to shake violently. Cracks splintered across the plaza, and from them, a chittering, insect-like legion of creatures made of black rock and sharp crystal clawed their way to the surface. The Squirrel had emerged. They were horrific, but their real weapon was silent. They hit the Kaelan with a powerful psychic blast of pure terror and confusion. The brave Kaelan warriors were instantly crippled, dropping their weapons and clutching their heads in agony. The Squirrel advanced, their victory all but certain. In the middle of the chaos, Jax stood his ground. He felt the Squirrel's psychic attack, but it was nothing compared to the ocean of emotion he'd learned to navigate from Elara. He stood firm, a rock of calm in a sea of fear. This was the moment. Elara, seeing the Squirrel, seeing her people collapse, and seeing Jax standing alone to protect her, finally understood. Her gift wasn't a curse, it was the answer. She stepped in front of Jax, turning to face her terrified people. She opened her mind, but this time she anchored herself to Jax. She tapped into the unshakable resolve, the stubborn courage, the deep well of compassion she had felt from him for weeks. She became a psychic amplifier for humanity. Through her, the essence of Jax's spirit, his resilience, and his unwavering belief that you always protect others, washed over the cowering Kaelan. It was the antidote to the Squirrel's attack. It was a shield of clarity and fierce, burning hope. Their fear vanished, replaced by cold resolve. They picked up their weapons, their lines reforming with a unity they'd never known. Then Elara turned to the Squirrel. With Jax as her anchor, she unleashed the full, unrestrained power of her mind. But she didn't project fear or hate. She projected the entire collected experience of her people, millennia of history, love, loss, art, and honor. For the parasitic, one-dimensional minds of the Squirrel, this tidal wave of genuine life was an unbearable poison. They shrieked in Piscic agony and retreated back into the darkness, their invasion broken.
Silence fell over the plaza. The battle was over. The Kaelan stood not in fear of Elara, but in absolute reverent awe. Elder Morwen, his face streaked with dust and shame, walked towards the girl and her human guardian. He lowered his head in the deepest bow of apology a Kaelan could offer. "You were not a curse," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You were a gift, one our fear and pride made us blind to. Forgive us." He then turned to the council and declared, "The decree of anathema is dissolved forever." Elara was no longer an outcast. She was hailed as the heart of Kaia, her name etched into their history as their savior. Her bond with Jax remained, now a symbol of a powerful new alliance between two species built on trust and acceptance. The human mission was a success beyond anyone's wildest dreams. They didn't just solve a famine, they helped a civilization save itself. Conclusion. And so, the girl who was once called a curse became their savior, proving that true strength isn't found in isolation, but in connection. It took a stubborn, compassionate human to show the Kaelan that their greatest fear was actually their greatest hope. Jax remained on Kaia as Elara's guardian, bound not by a curse or duty, but by an unbreakable bond of a chosen family. His presence was a living testament to the idea that sometimes, in a vast and uncaring galaxy, the most powerful thing you can be is simply human, making them, perhaps, the very best guardians the universe has to offer. CTA. If you enjoyed this story recap, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. What did you think of the bond between Jax and Elara? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.